Welcome to the channel, everybody! Today we're diving into a topic that's a little uncomfortable, but hey, that's kind of my thing, right? We're talking about the top 10 countries where, let's just say, the welcome mat might not be out for everyone. Specifically, if you're black and planning a trip abroad, there are some places where you might want to, shall we say, pack your patience. Look, the world is a beautiful and diverse place, and I'm all about experiencing different cultures. But let's be real, sometimes those cultures haven't quite caught up with the whole treating everyone with respect memo. So, if you're a black traveler and you don't want your vacation turning into an episode of Guess Who's Getting Side-Eyed at the Restaurant, then buckle up, because we're about to get real quick. Don't worry, this isn't about scaring anyone off travel. It's about being informed and prepared. Because knowledge is power, people. And hey, if you learn a thing or two, and maybe avoid an awkward encounter with a customs agent who's seen one too many Coming to America memes, then I've done my job. Now let's get into it. First up, we're heading over to Country a place with a history as rich and complex as a triple-shot latte made by a barista who moonlights as a history professor. And by complex, I mean, well, let's just say they haven't always been the poster child for racial harmony. We're talking centuries of colonialism where, surprise, surprise, the folks with the darker skin tones weren't exactly treated like royalty. And you know what they say, history has a way of sticking around like that one friend who never wants to leave your party. Even today, while things are definitely better, progress people, there's still a lingering undercurrent of, let's call it, cultural bias. It's the kind of place where you might get a few too many stares or find that people are a little too surprised when you're fluent in anything other than their stereotypical assumptions. Now, I'm not saying don't visit, but maybe brush up on your history, pack your sense of humor, and remember, sometimes the best way to combat prejudice is with a smile and a well-placed, "Oh honey, you clearly haven't met enough black people." Next up, we're jetting over to Country B, a place that's been making headlines lately, and not for winning any awards for inclusivity. Nope, we're talking about a string of recent incidents that, frankly, belong back in the dark ages. We're talking black tourists being denied service in restaurants, being harassed on the street, and even facing discrimination from law enforcement. I mean, come on, people. It's 2023, not 1953. Look, I get it, every country has its problems. But when it comes to race relations, Country B seems to be stuck on repeat. And it's not just isolated incidents, there's a pattern here, folks. A pattern that says, hey, if you're black, you might want to pack extra sunscreen because you're going to be getting burned by more than just the sun. Alright folks, let's talk about Country C. Now, even the powers that be, the ones who issue those official travel advisories, have something to say about this one. And let me tell you, when even the government is like, hey, maybe reconsider your trip, you know it's serious. They're not exactly handing out come one come all invitations to black travelers. Nope, they're more like, proceed with caution. And by caution, we mean be prepared for anything from subtle bias to outright discrimination. And look, I know what you're thinking, but Trevor, I shouldn't have to worry about this stuff when I'm on vacation. And you're right, you shouldn't. But unfortunately, that's the reality for a lot of black travelers. So, before you book that non-refundable ticket, maybe do your research, check out some travel blogs, and see what other black travelers are saying, because sometimes the best advice comes from people who've been there, done that, and unfortunately had to deal with the nonsense. Let's talk about Country D, a place that's known for its stunning landscapes and, well, let's just say, its complicated relationship with race. On the surface, it might seem idyllic, picturesque scenery, friendly locals, but scratch beneath the surface, and you might find a different story. See, in Country D, it's not always about overt racism. It's more like a quiet undercurrent of bias, a sense that you're always being watched, assessed, and categorized. It's the kind of place where people might smile at you, but you can't shake the feeling that they're also clutching their purses a little tighter. Now, I'm not saying everyone in Country D is like this, but there's a certain cultural lens that views black people with suspicion. A lens colored by stereotypes and misconceptions. It's the kind of place where you might constantly feel like you have to work twice as hard to prove you belong, to be seen as an individual rather than a walking, talking stereotype. You know, sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that come directly from people who've lived them. So for this one, we're going to hear from some black travelers who've experienced Country E firsthand. And let me tell you, Their stories are a mix of the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. We've got Traveler 1, who had an amazing time exploring the country's vibrant cities but also faced microaggressions and subtle forms of discrimination. Then there's Traveler 2, who had a terrifying experience with racial profiling by the police. And let's not forget Traveler 3, who found warmth and acceptance from locals who challenged the country's problematic history. Look, these stories are just a snapshot of the experiences Black travelers have had in Country E. Some people have amazing trips, while others encounter ignorance and prejudice. It's a reminder that travel, while enriching, can also be a stark reminder of the work that still needs to be done to combat racism around the world. Now let's talk about Country F, a place where the unwelcoming environment isn't just a matter of social attitudes, it's literally the law of the land. That's right, folks, we're talking about a country where discrimination is baked into the legal system like raisins in a fruitcake that nobody actually likes. We're talking about policies that disproportionately target Black people, laws that make it harder for them to live, work, and even just exist peacefully. It's the kind of place where being Black can feel like a liability, where you're constantly looking over your shoulder, worried about being targeted simply for the color of your skin. And you know what the worst part is? This isn't some relic of the past, this is happening right now in the 21st century. It's a stark reminder that progress isn't linear, and that even in a world that claims to value equality, the fight for justice is far from over. Hold on to your hats, folks, because we're about to dive into the world of media, and let me tell you, in Country G, it's not always a pretty picture. See, the way Black people are portrayed in their movies, TV shows, and news, let's just say it's stuck in a time warp, and not the cool kind where you get to wear bell-bottoms and platform shoes. We're talking about tired stereotypes, harmful caricatures, and a general lack of representation that would make even the most patient person want to throw their remote at the screen. It's the kind of media landscape where Black people are often relegated to the sidelines, stuck playing the same old roles that reinforce negative perceptions and fuel prejudice. And you know what's even more frustrating? This kind of misrepresentation seeps into the subconscious of society, shaping the way people view and interact with Black individuals in real life. It's a vicious cycle that perpetuates harmful stereotypes and makes it even harder to dismantle systemic racism. Okay, folks, it's not all doom and gloom. In the midst of all this, there are glimmers of hope, pockets of resistance where people are fighting the good fight against racism. And in Country H, they're doing just that. We're talking about grassroots organizations, activists, and everyday citizens who are working tirelessly to challenge discrimination, promote equality, and create a more inclusive society. They're organizing protests, raising awareness, and holding those in power accountable for their actions or inaction. It's a reminder that even in the face of adversity, the human spirit of resilience and the pursuit of justice can prevail. These individuals and organizations are beacons of hope, shining a light on the path towards a more equitable future. Alright folks, let's talk about Country 1, a place where the relationship with race is about as clear-cut as a Jackson Pollock painting. It's a complex tapestry woven from history, culture, and societal norms that often clash with the ideals of equality and inclusion. See, in Country 1, there's this deeply ingrained sense of social hierarchy, a system where people are often judged based on their ancestry, caste, or even skin tone. And while it's not always explicitly about race, the reality is that Black people often find themselves on the lower rungs of this ladder. It's a place where microaggressions are practically an art form, where subtle forms of discrimination are woven into the fabric of everyday life. It's the kind of place where you might constantly feel like you're navigating a minefield of unspoken rules and expectations, never quite sure if you're saying or doing the right thing. Okay folks, we've covered a lot of ground today, and I know it might seem overwhelming, but before you swear off international travel altogether, let's end on a practical note. If you're a Black traveler planning a trip to Country J, or any of the countries we've discussed, here are a few tips to keep in mind. First and foremost, do your research. Connect with other Black travelers, read blogs, and join online forums to get first-hand accounts and advice. Secondly, be aware of your surroundings and trust your gut. If a situation feels off, it probably is. And finally, don't be afraid to speak up if you experience discrimination. Your voice matters, and silence only empowers those who seek to divide us. And that's a wrap, folks. We've journeyed to some far-off lands, uncovered some uncomfortable truths, and hopefully, sparked some important conversations. Look, the world can be a complicated place, and racism unfortunately rears its ugly head in all corners of the globe. But here's the thing, knowledge is power. By shining a light on these issues, by talking about them openly and honestly, we can start to dismantle the systems that perpetuate inequality. So, the next time you're planning a trip, do your research, be prepared, and most importantly, travel with your eyes wide open. And hey, if you've got any stories, tips, or advice for fellow travelers, share them in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, stay informed, stay safe, and keep exploring this crazy, beautiful world.